Hello, and welcome to Scott's Odyssey. A long time ago, it was said that there was an old woman who lived in a shoe and had so many children that she didn't know what to do. But that's not the story we're here to talk about today. We're here to see the story of the old man who lived in a shoe, right here in Pennsylvania. See you in a minute. Welcome back. If you've watched my videos before, thank you for your patronage, and if you're new to Scott's Odyssey, welcome aboard. I need to apologize in advance as I missed what I would call, at least for now, the end of the historical line for this site, which transpired in late July of 2022. But that does not mean I cannot capture what is left and show you the history and memories that this building brought to many adults and children alike. It all started in York, Pennsylvania during the earlier part of the 1940s. A man named Mahlon Nathaniel Haines was busy building a little empire in the township of Hallam. Mahlon was a prominent businessman, a philanthropist, and, well, a shoe salesman. And when I say a shoe salesman, he was so good at selling shoes that he was commonly referred to as the shoe wizard. All the way back in 1875, shortly after Mahlon was born, his father passed away and left his mother, Elizabeth Ann Morrison Haines, in quite the pickle. She was a widowed woman with a new baby, and, well, life in those times was extremely hard for women in those situations. So, being a strong woman, in 1882, Elizabeth picked up what she had and relocated her and her son to Washington, D.C., where she opened a store that they both lived directly above, and then turned it into a small department store. Later in 1892, Mahlon went off to college, and Elizabeth reached the point where she opened a significantly larger department store that was called the largest store in the world, built, owned, and controlled by a woman. She adamantly denied his request, which sent Mahlon off into the world selling clothes and shoes to different clothing stores on the West Coast. Eventually, Mahlon fell in love, moved back east to Ohio to get married, got dumped, and went Forrest Gump style on a bicycle ride from Old Washington, Ohio to Washington, D.C. in an attempt to get his employment back with his mother. In 1905, his trip to D.C., it failed miserably. After 330 miles traveling through the Allegheny Mountains, Mahlon's bicycle broke down in York, Pennsylvania, just a mere 90 miles from his destination. He sold the engagement ring and used the money to buy 10 pairs of shoes. He then took those shoes down to the York Farmers Market and sold them. With the money that he made, he rented a third-floor apartment on West Market Street, got a loan to open a shoe sales business, and then, well, he went bankrupt within 2 years. Mahlon went back to selling shoes on consignment as he did on the West Coast, this time for D.S. Peterman & Company. The manner in which he sold the shoes was considered a new and innovative door-to-door sales technique, this time using an old Ford as his mobile retail store instead of a bicycle. And, well, he was really good at it. So good that by 1922, he was the owner and operator of 30 shoe stores. In 1924, his philanthropism kicked into full gear and he bought 318 acres of land, which was called the Yorkshire Ranch. And then he donated a plot, which became the Springett's Fire Company. Then he had streets installed in the ranch and gave free housing plots to those whom were suffering from the effects of the Great Depression. And it created the Yorkshire subdivision. He even built a schoolhouse for the community. In 1928, he requested to use the horse track at the York Fairgrounds, and they turned him down. So he built a half-mile track called the Haines Park, which held horse races weekly and became the very first track in the state to have night races with overhead electric lights. By 1931, Haines the Shoe Wizard was a household name and had become the largest shoe store chain in the United States of America. And by 1935, Mahlon had 50 Haines Shoe Company stores across Pennsylvania and Maryland, 6 of the stores in York, Pennsylvania alone. Being a philanthropist, Mahlon gave back to the community by turning his factory on West Philadelphia Street into a hotel in 1940. In 1941, Mahlon would host the Haines Safari on his forested land, and he would do this every 4 years with invites to only the Boy Scouts to celebrate his birthday. In 1960, he donated the land to the York Adams Area Council of Boy Scouts, now known as the New Birth of Freedom Council, and the area was renamed Wizard Ranch, who still celebrate the Wizard Safari every 4 years. That brings us to this shoe, or more accurately, this boot. With his own land and subdivisions and a road that the people named after him and all his giving back to the community, Mahlon wanted something to be remembered by that went beyond his deeds and wanted to do it in a style for that which challenged and changed his life forever. In 1948, he reached out to local contractors to help him build a functional house that looks like a work boot. Yep, you heard that right. He wanted to be remembered with a house that looks like a work boot. It's even recorded in an ad from July of 1949 that publicly thanks 20 local businesses that participated in the project. Mahlon lived in his 25 feet high, 17 feet wide, and 48 feet long work boot house for just a few months, while he was having another house built just across the street. And then he used it for hosting honeymooners and married couples celebrating their anniversary whom were affiliated with his company for free, complete with full-service staff and a free pair of shoes. In 1960, Mahlon was feeling his age and sold off his 4,000-acre cattle ranch in South Dakota, and then he divvied up his shoe business, giving 28 key employees each their own store. The majority of his land estate was granted to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the YMCA, the YWCA, his church, and the York Hospital. In 1962, just before his death due to heart conditions and a surgery that went very poorly, Mahlon gave the house that looks like a boot to his employees. With the end of the Haines shoe empire also came the end of the use of the shoe house, which the former employees sold 2 years later to a dentist who initiated tours, set the beginning of a museum, and later opened an ice cream parlor. 25 years later, the building began to fall into ruin, and in 1987 it was picked up by Haines' granddaughter, Annie Haines Keller, who initiated a renovation. The building continued operating with tours, ice cream, and as a museum through several more owners up until July of 2022. So during the entire life of the shoe house, ever since the passing of Mahlon Haines, it has been a testament to a wonderful story of history and maintained as a museum, just as Mahlon had intended. Even the locals drop a model of the shoe house during their New Year celebration. But hey, it's 2023, and keeping history alive to tell the story of who we once were is something everyone loves, right? Well, no, not exactly. During 2021 through 2022, we have seen what is called history revisioning, where people rewrite history to tell a story to garner eyes and ears that will pay money, and we just delete the real history, or we just don't tell it at all. Heck, there's a modern habit of historical information being erased on the internet right now, and just blatantly made up news stories of history that never happened. Here's a phrase that I came up with that I'd like to present to you that represents the other evil that is creeping into our historical sites. I call it history gentrification, where someone comes in and picks up a site of history and reforms it to be something it was never meant to be. And then they use its historic attraction as their advertisement medium to garner more money. I mean, reuse is great, and when people can keep history alive, it's even better. But when you keep it from the people and then charge people, not for the upkeep, but for the profit, then you have history gentrification, which keeps those who do not have the money away from knowing the real history, and those in control believe that they bought the history when they purchased the location, so they feel they can change or manipulate the history to be whatever their marketable needs suit. And then they deem it real. So, as I said in the beginning, I was late to the party on this site, and well, I missed the mark for the museum tour by about a month. The Haines Shoe House is permanently closed as a museum and parlor. The site has been reopened as a short-term rental through VRBO, which is the East Coast version of Airbnb, which ultimately is nothing more than a reinvention of the infamous timeshare concept scamming groups, making it only available to those who wish to stay in a house shaped like a work boot for its simple oddity, and not a testament to the work of Mahlon Haines, nor as a museum to capture an era of a time and a person who attained the American dream and became a member of the community with a heart of gold. And that is the story of the Haines Shoe House. If you enjoyed this video or learned anything new, be sure to subscribe, give me a like, leave me a comment. I typically reply very quickly. If you have suggestions for other stories you would like to see, jump over to the About section of this channel and send me an email, or come join me on Facebook or Instagram. Send me a message. Special thanks to all the patrons who stuck around while things got really slow, and more so to those patrons who are still here. I thank you. And being that you stayed to this point, the end of the video, why not check out this video suggestion from the almighty YouTube AI algorithm? Or just go to the channel and find a video that you think you might like. As always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.